The holiday that should have been a reset. You know those dreamy travel montages in films? Scenic train rides, shared laughter over wine. Family members learning to love again while framed by the Tuscan sun. Yeah, this was supposed to be that. That was the plan. A healing, reconnecting, family bonding sort of affair. The kind where everyone grows closer. Someone cries over spaghetti. And maybe, just maybe, my siblings would finally acknowledge that I'm not. In fact, an unpaid emotional support animal with a contactless card. But what did we get instead? We got to be the invisible sugar daddies of the trip. The unsung heroes. The two-person finance department / chauffeur service / forgotten. Footnotes in a holiday we paid for. Honestly, from the second we landed, it became clear that my spouse and I were not so much part of the group as adjacent to it. Like we'd accidentally photobombed their family trip and they were just too Britishly polite to ask us to leave. They treated us like hotel staff who'd somehow developed personalities. Like Airbnb hosts who linger too long after handing over the keys. At one point, I'm pretty sure my younger sister actually said, "Wait, are you guys coming with us to the museum?" Yes, darling. I know we've shared DNA and a rental car for the past week. But clearly the concept of us existing as people with, passports and feelings is a bit much for you. And before you ask, yes, we paid for everything. Flights, accommodation, rail passes. Even that overpriced, authentic pasta-making class in Florence, where the instructor looked like he wanted to die. And the only thing we learned was that flour gets everywhere. You're welcome. But were we thanked? No. Acknowledged? Barely. Included in plans? Only if you count being told they were going out and then left. A breadcrumb trail of Instagram stories to work out where. I was one group selfie away from walking into the sea. And honestly, at first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they are just excited. Maybe they think we're okay with this. Maybe this is what bonding looks like now. Subtle exclusion with a sprinkle of financial exploitation. Adulthood really is the gift that keeps on giving. My spouse, bless them, kept saying, they are probably just overwhelmed. You know how your family gets. Yes, emotionally constipated and chronically allergic to gratitude. Like trying to hug a cactus that sends you Venmo requests. It got to the point where I'd look around at the group chatting and laughing. Like we weren't there and think, are we ghosts? Did we die at that service station in Belgium? Is this just an extended haunting? I half expected someone to walk through me at breakfast. There was this moment, mid-trip, mid-fatigue, mid-spiritual decline, where my youngest sibling looked right past me and said, "Can someone message the Airbnb host?" And I thought, I am the Airbnb host. I booked it. I paid for it. I am the reason you have a toilet that flushes. But instead of screaming into the void, tempting, I just smiled. That quiet, tired smile that says, I've mentally rewritten my will and you're not in it. It's impressive how much sarcasm can be packed into a single facial expression when you're being spiritually discarded by your own family. Because here's the thing, this trip was supposed to be a reset. A family refresh. A chance to bond over shared memories and overpriced gelato. But instead, it turned into a grim little documentary called Two Generous Idiots Accidentally Fund a Group Trip for people who think they are contestants on Love Island. And the worst part? We let it happen at first. We watched it unfold like a car crash in slow motion while politely asking if anyone needed a lift from the wreckage. Because we still hoped, deep down, that maybe someone would notice us. Say thanks. Ask how we were doing. Remember we are human. Spoiler, they didn't. So yes, that was day one. Stay tuned for the part where I quietly cancel everything. Unleash a mild apocalypse. And sip espresso while the family burns in administrative chaos. Because if you're going to be treated like an unpaid concierge, you might as well start charging by the tantrum. The group dynamic, the sibling cult put us as extras. By day 2, it became abundantly clear that my siblings had not formed a family unit. As one might expect on a lovingly planned holiday, oh no. What they'd formed was a cult. A full-blown, giggle-fueled, chaotic, socially exclusive, badly dressed traveling cult. Think less Charles Manson, more Weatherspoons on tour. And my spouse and I. We were the bewildered extras who accidentally wandered onto the wrong set. They traveled as one. A loud swarm of chaotic inside jokes and shared TikTok references that felt like a foreign language. Honestly, if you weren't in the sacred WhatsApp thread created weeks before the trip, we weren't. You might as well have been a lamppost with a credit card. Everything, and I mean everything, was an in-joke. If one of them sneezed, the others would collapse in hysterics. Because apparently it referenced something hilarious that happened in 2016. During the Ibiza incident, which no one would explain, by the way. My spouse and I would just smile politely like unpaid babysitters at a particularly exhausting children's birthday party, wondering how we'd become ghostly apparitions in our own itinerary. At breakfast, they'd huddle at one end of the table, whispering and snorting over their phones, while we sat at the other end like said royal portraits no one looks at anymore. Occasionally one of them would throw a crumb of acknowledgement our way with a comment like, "Oh, you're up?" As if we lived in the crawl space under the Airbnb and had just emerged to request sunlight. They didn't include us in any planning. Not that we asked to be involved, we just assumed naively that as the organizers and financiers, we'd at least be looped in when deciding where the hell we were going. But nope. My siblings would plan entire days, complete with restaurant bookings and museum tours, without so much as a "what do you two fancy doing?" The answer to that, by the way, was a leaving. And when we did ask, just to be wildly outrageous and try to contribute, we'd get this collective glazed look. The kind you give someone who's just told you they enjoy room temperature mayonnaise and 8 a.m. jogging. Like we were speaking a dialect of disappointment they didn't understand. But the cherry on the expired cheesecake came when they started referring to us as them. Not even you guys or my sibling and their spouse. No, we were them. A pronoun reserved for enemies, tax collectors, and people who send too many texts in the group chat. They can just meet us there. Are they even coming? Did they book that? They. Darling, they are the reason you're not sleeping in a train station in Dijon. I remember standing outside a gelato place in Rome, watching them giggle their way down the cobbled street like a pack of feral influencers, and thinking, if I threw myself into the Trevi fountain right now, would they even notice? Or would they just assume I'd gone to check the booking confirmations again? It's not even that they were cruel. That would have at least given me something to argue about. No, what they were was worse, completely indifferent. We were simply there. Like background music. Pleasant, sometimes useful, but ultimately ignorable. They just floated past us, buoyed by their own chaotic energy and the comforting knowledge that someone else had sorted the boring, grown-up things like where we are sleeping tonight. Meanwhile, my spouse and I began to develop a kind of dark humor survival technique, whispering savage commentary to each other mid-exclusion. Oh look, they are planning another dinner we are not invited to. I hope it's the place with the food poisoning reviews. Or should we pretend to lose the credit card, just to see what happens when they try to buy a bottle of water in Switzerland? We started treating the whole experience like a wildlife documentary. Observe the younger siblings in their natural habitat. Notice how they form tight circles to conserve heat, and alienate those who paid for the accommodation. Fascinating creatures, really. Rarely grateful. Often loud. But behind the sarcasm, there was that soft, angry ache. The realization that this wasn't an accident. It wasn't one awkward moment or one forgotten invite. It was a pattern. A dynamic. One where we were perpetually responsible and perpetually left out. Like the parent you become once you turn 30. Except you're still being talked over by someone who can't pronounce gnocchi, but insists on ordering it anyway. So there we were. In Europe. On a beautiful trip we organized. Watching our siblings have the time of their lives while pretending we were part of the scenery. Paid for, tolerated, and ultimately othered. But don't worry. We had a plan. A gloriously petty, espresso-fueled, spreadsheet-referenced plan. Because when you spend enough time being referred to as them, you start plotting like them. The ghost couple who pays for everything. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine sweeping vineyard views, quaint cobbled streets, boutique hotels with unnecessarily firm pillows, and those charming European train rides where you feel like you're starring in a romantic indie film minus the romance and with significantly more back pain. Now add in a married couple. Pleasant looking. Tired smiles. Clutching an itinerary and a shared sense of dwindling hope. That's us. We were the ghost couple who pays for everything, not quite real, not quite gone. And very much in charge of the spreadsheet holding the entire holiday together. Think of us as the spiritual backbone of the trip. Except no one asked us how we were doing because, presumably, ghosts don't have feelings or Visa cards with spending limits. Hotels. We booked them. 4-star, mind you. Not because we are fancy, but because we didn't want to risk another rustic disaster like that time my brother booked a hostel in Prague where the shower was literally a hose in the corner of the room. Train rides. We sorted those too. Reserved seats. Scenic routes. The kind of thoughtful planning that says, we care about your lower back health. Wine tour. Yes, we arranged it. A private one, no less. With an actual sommelier who used words like tannins and a structure, and absolutely none of my siblings listened because they were too busy taking selfies in front of the wine barrels like it was the Louvre. But gratitude. Gratitude is for people who don't think the wine just spawns from the ground into their glasses. Like some kind of fermented miracle. Not one thank you. Not a single hey, this is lovely. Not even a nod in our general direction. My presence was treated with the same reverence as a hotel lamp there. Useful, plugged in. But ultimately forgettable unless someone stubs their toe on it. I started calling us the rich wallpaper in my head. You know, nice to look at, completely ignored, quietly holding the room together. I was tempted to start peeling myself off the wall just to see if anyone noticed. Spoiler, they wouldn't have. They would have just assumed the Airbnb had gone minimalist. Meanwhile, my spouse, God bless them, remained the embodiment of grace under emotional fire. Calm, kind, endlessly patient. Every time I hissed, "Did you hear what your brother just said to me?" they'd reply with something like, "Maybe he didn't mean it that way." Which is code for please don't punch your way through the charcuterie board again. But me? Oh, I was one passive-aggressive meltdown away from lighting a vineyard on fire and calling it performance art. Just once I wanted to turn to the group and say, quick question, do any of you know how hotels get paid for? Do you think the Wi-Fi comes free with youth and obliviousness? Instead, I expressed myself the healthy British way. By making tiny sarcastic comments and then pretending they were jokes. Wow, another booking we made that no one thanked us for, how surprising. Ha ha. Just a bit of banter, innit? And then crying in the bathroom of a French bistro because someone ate my pre-ordered vegetarian meal and said, "You weren't hungry anyway, right?" It was around this point in the holiday that I began to seriously consider faking an injury. Nothing too dramatic, just enough to get sent home early. A twisted ankle. A mysterious cough. Maybe inventing a mild allergy to sibling-induced disappointment. But no. I stayed. Because like any good emotionally unraveled martyr, I wanted to see it through. I wanted to witness every gloriously awful moment. Every ignored conversation. Every group selfie that somehow failed to include the people who organized the entire damn trip. Because sometimes you stay in the chaos not out of hope, but out of morbid curiosity. And also because you'd already paid non-refundable rates on 3 train legs and a vineyard lunch. So there we were. The ghost couple, floating through Europe like 2 caffeinated specters, holding all the logistics, none of the love. And the mounting realization that we could vanish entirely and the only real loss would be the Airbnb password. And still, we smiled. Because we're British. And if there's one thing we do better than passive-aggressive despair, it's pretending everything's fine, while emotionally combusting over a cheese board. But don't worry. The unraveling was coming. And when it did, it would be glorious. The parental wisdom, utterly useless. Eventually, I snapped, quietly, of course. Not a dramatic scene. No screaming, no tears. Not even the satisfaction of smashing a wine glass into the Amalfi Coast tiles like some betrayed soap opera spouse. Just a subtle emotional implosion, as is tradition. The classic British breakdown, silent, dignified, and mostly happening in the chest cavity while outwardly appearing to be slightly more pale than usual. So there I was, sipping something vaguely herbal on the balcony of our overpriced Florence rental, staring into the middle distance like a Jane Austen protagonist who just discovered her inheritance was being given to a distant cousin. And I asked gently, warily, like one might approach a rabid dog or an untethered toddler with a glitter gun, I asked my parents, why do none of them include us? And without missing a beat, without a shred of introspection or the barest flicker of emotional responsibility, they said, that's just how they are. Oh, brilliant. Case closed, then. Mystery solved. Sherlock Holmes can pack up and go home. Apparently, my siblings being raging, self-absorbed chaos goblins is not only normal, it's expected. And I'm meant to just nod along like a well-dressed enabler on a Mediterranean apology tour. That's just how they are. What a sentence. What a monument to passive parenting and Olympic-level excuse-making. Imagine applying that logic to literally any other situation. He set the kitchen on fire. That's just how he is. She embezzled £200,000 from the family bakery. Oh, classic her. They forgot my spouse's name for the 4th time and called them Thingy. Well, you know them. Must be lovely, living in the land of zero accountability, where no one's held responsible for their actions, because their entire personality's been grandfathered in under the label of quirky but lovable. Except, plot twist, they are not quirky. They are not lovable. They are just rude. And I'm the poor sod funding their group therapy through wine tastings and Wi-Fi passwords. It was at this point in the conversation, if we can even call it that, since my father was mostly nodding while scrolling through a local tapas menu, that I realized something. I wasn't angry at them. I was angry around them. I was a simmering stew of unspoken resentment being stirred by a wooden spoon of parental indifference. And when I voiced this, with what I thought was impressive restraint, my mother gave me that well-meaning but vacant expression parents reserve for when you're bleeding emotionally and they'd rather talk about lavender oil. You're just more responsible. You've always been the sensible one. Ah, yes. That classic generational gaslighting, the eldest child syndrome, where being emotionally stable becomes a punishment rather than a character strength. Because I'm the strong one, I get to fund the trip, get ignored, do the admin, and still be expected to forgive them all by dessert. At this point I was fully spiraling. Internally. Of course, I didn't want to interrupt the family's daily ritual of ignoring me. But the monologue in my head was loud. So let me get this straight. They get to act like hormonal raccoons with iPhones. And I get to bankroll it and shut up, because that's just how they are. Am I on a hidden camera show? Is this a social experiment? Are the producers going to leap out of the wine cellar and hand me a voucher for free therapy and a quiet life in Cornwall? No one leapt out. No therapy voucher arrived. Just the awkward sound of my mother offering me half a biscotti and asking if I'd maybe feel better after a nap. Reader, I did not feel better after a nap. I felt worse because I woke up to a group selfie taken at a rooftop bar I booked, with a caption that read, "Fam time 2 hearts, and surprise surprise, we weren't in it." At this point, the emotional dam had cracked. And there was only one thing left to do: embrace the chaos. Drop the rope. Let the grown adults wander Europe unsupervised and UN hoteled. But first, just one final act of polite self-destruction. The smile of the damned. So I smiled. Not a happy smile. Not a "what a lovely trip with my cherished siblings" smile. No. This was the smile of someone who spiritually evaporated. The kind of smile you wear when you've mentally sorted every family member into little boxes labeled "never again," only at funerals, and unfollowed but not blocked because mum would notice. A smile so tight it could have sliced cheese. A smile that screamed, "I'm fine," in the way British people mean. I'm 2 seconds from torching the Eurostar that night while they snored and murmured in their sleep about gelato flavors and Instagram captions tucked under plush hotel duvets I paid for. I opened my laptop with the focus of someone disarming a bomb. Except I wasn't saving lives. I was detonating plans. Quietly. Methodically. Deliciously. One by one, I cancelled everything. Trains, cancelled. Hotels, gone. Museum passes, canal tours. And that fancy cheese tasting in Lyon they were all weirdly hyped about. Vamoosed. Even the vineyard excursion with the free tote bag. Obliterated. It was like a digital exorcism. I was purging my inbox, my soul, and my travel calendar all at once. A one-woman reckoning with Expedia. Tabs open in 4 languages and a cancellation policy as my new religion. And let me tell you, I felt nothing. No guilt. No hesitation. Not even a flicker of doubt. Just the smooth, mechanical satisfaction of clicking cancel booking and watching the email confirmations roll in like little affirmations from the universe. Your reservation has been cancelled. We are sorry to see you go. No refund available because your family sucks and this is karmic tax. I imagined future versions of them waking up to the smell of continental breakfast and discovering, horror of horrors, they'd have to plan things themselves. Book their own transport. Coordinate their own day. Actually, speak to each other like functioning adults. Ha. I even left a few clues. Nothing too obvious, just breadcrumbs of impending chaos. A deleted calendar invite here, a vanished confirmation email there. Subtle moves. Like a cat knocking objects off a shelf, one disdainful paw swipe at a time. My spouse, bless their telepathic heart, said nothing. Just watched me cancel. A series of gourmet walking tours with the resigned affection of someone who's watched this slow descent into madness unfold since Prague. They handed me a biscuit and whispered, "Make sure you screenshot the cancellation emails. You'll want to revisit this moment." Honestly. Romance. Somewhere around 2:37 a.m. After cancelling a sunset gondola ride in Venice that none of them even knew existed yet, I closed the laptop and exhaled. It felt like closing a chapter. A very expensive, emotionally bruising, tapas-filled chapter. Then I slept. Better than I had in days. Deep, delicious sleep, the kind only available to people who finally stopped setting themselves on fire to keep other people warm. Because that's the thing about being the responsible one. You're expected to carry the logistics, the emotional load, the dinner reservations, and everyone's water bottles, all while being told you're just a bit uptight. Well, not anymore. I wasn't their unpaid travel agent. I wasn't their default fixer. I wasn't even on their radar, let alone in their photos. So why bother? Let them have their trip. Their beautiful, self-organized, spontaneous, underfunded trip. Let them try to book last-minute accommodation during tourist season. Let them realize wine tastings don't just magically appear in the schedule like fairy tale side quests. Let them wander. And me? I'd be there, watching it all unfold with the serenity of a villain in Act 2, sipping an overpriced espresso, reading a book I actually liked, and smiling. Still smiling. The smile of the damned, the morning after, travel edition of the Hunger Games. Morning broke like it always does, warm sun on terracotta rooftops. Birds chirping, distant bells ringing. And the unmistakable sound of mild, upper-middle-class panic. I was already up, naturally. Sat on the terrace with a cappuccino and a moral high ground so elevated it required oxygen. The espresso was strong, my resolve stronger, and the smugness palpable. You could spread it on a croissant. The first sibling emerged from their room, bleary-eyed, sunburnt, and still dressed like an Instagram reel about summer in Italy. They yawned, stretched, and asked, as if it were the most casual thing in the world, "Hey, what time's checkout?" "Oh, about 6 hours ago." Love, I thought. But outwardly I just raised one eyebrow like I was auditioning for a villain role in The Crown. Cue the receptionist knocking on the door with a politely passive-aggressive smile, asking, in very crisp English, whether we were aware that the suite wasn't paid for. Chef's kiss. The next 15 minutes. Glorious. Watching them all scramble around the hotel lobby like hungover chickens, who just realized they missed their flight to competence. It was art. I wanted to frame it and hang it above my fireplace. There must be a glitch. One of them gasped, staring at the booking app like it had personally betrayed them. Yes, darling. The glitch is called consequences. Apparently. When you treat the person booking your entire luxury holiday like an optional background character, said character might just rewrite the entire third act. One tried to call the hotel's central office. Another insisted their card must have been accidentally removed from the booking. My youngest sibling, who once tried to microwave a boiled egg, stood in the corner googling what to do when your vacation disappears. My parents. Silent. Just stunned. Like they'd walked into a surprise party hosted by karma. They looked at me with the exact expression of a couple discovering their child wasn't just the responsible one, but the emotionally unhinged responsible one with a credit card and a Wi-Fi connection. And me. I sipped my espresso. Slowly. No rush. The foam sat atop the cup like the smugness sat atop my soul, creamy. Luxurious, entirely justified. I crossed my legs like a Bond villain, watching their plan unfold on a screen of elegant ruin. I was calm. Poised. Unbothered. Inside, I was doing emotional cartwheels. Outside, I adjusted my sunglasses and said, with a voice full of martyrdom and just a hint of fake innocence, "Oh? I assumed everyone wanted a bit more freedom to explore. Isn't that what you said the other night?" My spouse, bless their chaotic neutral energy, sat beside me chewing on their croissant like it was laced with antidepressants. I could see them vibrating from the effort not to burst into laughter. Their shoulders did that weird shake that only happens when you're dying inside but trying to look normal. Like a penguin having a discreet seizure. To their credit, no one screamed. There were no theatrics. Just simmering, sullen realizations blooming across their faces like wilted roses in a travel brochure gone horribly wrong. A slow, beautiful detonation of ego. Eventually, one of them muttered, "So what now?" "Well," I replied, delicately placing my cup on its saucer, "you could always." "I don't know." "Figure it out." And then I stood, stretched, and offered a sweet little shrug. The international gesture for "not my problem, love." I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad, or bitter, or even emotionally flammable. I was simply done. Done playing the coordinator, the caretaker, the convenient cash dispenser with a calendar app. I dropped the rope, and it was frankly liberating. Let them book their own transport. Let them navigate Italian train strikes and Google Translate menu disasters. Let them discover that group discount means someone had to organize the group. Meanwhile, my spouse and I had plans. Quiet plans. Expensive, private, entirely booked plans. Because some glitches are entirely on purpose, suddenly we are visible. Would you look at that, the ghost couple returns to human form. Turns out we did exist after all. Not just sentient bank accounts with legs. Not just background furniture in linen. Actual, visible people. Apparently. All it takes is stripping away their creature comforts for my siblings to realize we were on the trip too. Who knew? The moment the cancellation chaos hit peak volume, suddenly there were eyes on us. Big, betrayed, blinking eyes. As if I'd just slapped a gelato out of their hand and kicked their Airbnb host in the shins. Why would you do this? How could you? But what about us? Oh, darling. Let me take a moment to locate the part of me that gives a solitary toss. What about us? That one was my favorite. As if I hadn't spent the last 10 days quietly funding their European eat. Pray, ignore me tour. As if I hadn't been the invisible scaffolding holding up the whole pastel-filtered fantasy while they skipped through piazzas. Like a stock footage ad for travel insurance. The irony? So thick you could butter toast with it. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just tilted my head. You know the look, the one that says, I've got receipts and no remaining emotional bandwidth. And then, with the serenity of a Buddhist monk who's accidentally achieved enlightenment through spite, I said, that's just how I am. A direct quote, mind you. Lifted verbatim from the parental gospel. They themselves used to excuse everyone else's behavior. Like a reverse Uno card, but with generational trauma and credit card debt. Even my mum, God bless her willful delusion, gave me the slow blink nod. That blink that says, fair play, actually. For once, they couldn't argue. Because how do you call someone cruel for doing exactly what you've been excusing in everyone else for years? What followed was a silence so profound. I could hear a pigeon coughing on the next balcony. They didn't know what to say. Not because they were suddenly struck by empathy or introspection, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But because they'd never expected me to stop absorbing. To stop smoothing things over. To stop making everything magically work. I think they'd genuinely forgotten I was capable of boundaries. That I could quietly become the problem they couldn't ignore. It's wild, isn't it? How people will walk all over you and then be genuinely shocked when you lie down somewhere else. Now, I'd love to tell you there was a deep, meaningful family breakthrough in that moment. That someone cried. That we hugged. That the credits rolled over a renewed sense of mutual respect. We did not. There were no violins. Just a few awkward throat clears and a lot of avoiding eye contact with the one person who just surgically removed their entitlement with a scalpel made of sarcasm. But in that silence, I felt a shift. Not from them, God no. Personal growth isn't exactly their currency. But in me. I didn't feel guilty. Or dramatic. Or even that little sting of was I too much. No. I felt clear. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a boundary. A delayed, very adult, very expensive boundary. And the best part? I didn't need them to get it. Not really. Let them chew on the moment like day-old focaccia. Let them dissect it later in whatever group chat I'm not in. I delivered my line. I'd exited the scene. With dignity, a decent tan, and my dignity mostly intact. Suddenly visible. Finally untouchable, the attempted guilt trip. Ah, the guilt trip. The emotional equivalent of being dragged through a muddy field in your best shoes and then told It's your fault you're dirty. Classic. Right after the hotel debacle. As if choreographed by some cruel sitcom writer who clearly hates me. The guilt brigade arrived in full force. Picture a pack of wounded puppies. Looking up with eyes so big you want to feed them something vaguely human, but you're also thinking, nope, not today. We didn't mean to ignore you. You're overreacting. And my personal favorite, delivered with Oscar-worthy sincerity. You've ruined the trip. Oh, the audacity. Imagine the cheek. The holiday I financed. The one where I was treated like a stray cat nobody wanted to feed or pet. Was now ruined because I dared to set boundaries. If this were a sitcom, I'd be the underappreciated eldest sibling, the one who bakes all the cakes, organizes all the trips, and then quietly loses their mind by episode 3. And at the end, I'd get a Netflix spin-off. A heartfelt dramedy where I live alone, drink slightly too much tea, and finally get the peace and respect I deserve. Spoiler alert, no one else would be invited. But back to reality. I just stared at them, amused. Not the fun kind of amusement. The this is deeply tragic but also a little hilarious kind. I mean, how does one overreact to having their identity erased by family on a continent? That's basically one big postcard. And their apologies as thin as the air at 30,000 feet. And about as satisfying as a soggy biscuit. I considered delivering a dramatic monologue about self-worth and invisible emotional labor. But honestly, my espresso was too good. And my patience too thin. Instead, I went with the patented eldest child weapon, deadpan silence. Because sometimes, words just aren't worth the emotional investment. When you've already paid the bill. Literally and metaphorically. So, yes, I ruined the trip. Ruined the fantasy where I was invisible. Endlessly patient and financially solvent. And if that makes me a villain in this family drama, fine. Call me the Ghostbuster. At least now I'm seen, heard, and, most importantly, no longer funding their selective amnesia. New plan, just me, my spouse, and petty revenge. So, with all the subtlety of a budget airline boarding announcement, my spouse and I executed the greatest family holiday pivot since someone decided to replace actual maps with Google. We rebooked. Just us. Solo. No siblings. No awkward silences where I'm pretending not to hear them gossip about me like I'm a roaming Wi-Fi signal they can't quite connect to. Our itinerary. The kind of indulgent, low-key extravagance that says, we don't need you lot to have a good time, thanks very much. Think private wine tastings where the only thing being talked over is the rich notes of a 2016 Bordeaux, not Jake's latest Bratwurst debacle. Which, if I'm honest, sounds like an episode of Dad Jokes Gone Wild. Spa days where the only stress was deciding whether to have a lavender or eucalyptus massage. Not whether my own sibling would acknowledge my existence beyond a grunt. Private dinners so peaceful. I almost forgot what it felt like to be drowned out by a sibling's laughter while they recount a joke I wasn't in on. We toasted to boundaries. To credit card control. Because nothing says power move like owning the card and the patience to cancel everyone else's bookings. And to the spiritual joy of leaving group chats that once resembled a chaotic fusion of a soap opera and a bad reality TV show. Goodbye. Endless notifications of who's lost their passport or forgot the room key. Hello, blissful silence. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. Or rather across Europe. My family scrambled like it was the last Black Friday sale on budget flights and hostel beds. They traded 4-star champagne for 4-hour layovers. And boutique hotels for the charming aromas of shared bathrooms and suspicious carpets. They tried desperately to salvage a holiday I hadn't ruined, only reclaimed. But let's be honest. There's a poetic justice in watching your family embrace austerity tourism because you finally stopped being their ATM with legs. Of course, part of me wanted to call and offer them a voucher for a family therapy session or at least a warm cup of empathy. But then, I remembered the hospitality I received on the trip. Exactly zero. Nada. So, cheers to us, the ghost couple turned tourists with autonomy. May your wine be full, your spas be tranquil, and your family holidays forever a you do you kind of affair. Post-trip vibes, family who? Back home, the group chat fell eerily silent. You'd think a small, unspoken truce had been reached, or that my siblings had collectively decided to practice the ancient art of selective amnesia. Honestly, it was more let's pretend it never happened than healing process. And believe me, I'm not holding my breath for any kumbaya moments. My siblings ghosted me harder than a dodgy Tinder date. Suddenly, I was the family member who only existed in the faint echoes of forgotten photos, you know. The ones where I'm always the blurry background figure nobody remembers inviting. And my parents. Oh, bless them. They are treading the fine line between trying not to pick sides and actively hoping I'll just disappear for their peace of mind. Classic parental maneuver. Fence-sitting like pros. Probably Googling how to keep adult children from leaving, but not alienate the rest of the family. Too late, darlings. I've officially opted out of being the emotional and financial support beam of this circus. The one who plans, pays, and quietly endures the silent treatment. It was a role I played with the enthusiasm of a wet weekend in Blackpool, compulsory and a bit depressing. Next holiday. Just us. No siblings, no cryptic texts about who forgot to pack the passports. And definitely no one talking over me while I try to comment on the scenic view. Maybe even fake names, just for kicks. Because if I'm going to be invisible, I might as well do it with style and a dash of mystery. And absolutely no cheese tastings unless I'm worshipped like some kind of dairy deity. I mean, who do they think I am? The patron saint of unpaid bills and ignored kindness. So here's to post-trip vibes, quieter, kinder, and decidedly less expensive. Because sometimes, the best family reunion is the one where you don't show up.